So in case you can't remember me because I've taken my jacket off, this is David 2 now. And this is our fully fledged panel. It grows each time. I don't know, for the regular visitors, it gets bigger and bigger, which is a delight to have all of these people. It makes my job bloody hard. But there you go. So we have some a usual round of questions. We're in the sphere, as we know, of low-code, no-code. We have a number of different representatives here who will come at it from different angles. Yeah, some providers, some users, etc., etc. So I'm going to let everybody give themselves a quick introduction so that we know who we've got.
Hello, I'm Nicola. I'm staff engineer here at Zigo.
Thanks, Nicola.
So I'm Neil Dueck. I'm with Fujitsu with One Hat, looking after their platform engineering products, and also doing some advisory work for App Circle, who are one of the sponsors of tonight's event. I'm just going to give you a quick 10 seconds because David didn't get a chance to speak. It's a fantastic platform for mobile development. You can build, test, and deploy. And if any of you guys are using App Center and finding out that it's been sunsetted, you should definitely check out App Circle. So over to
I've got one.
He's got one.
I've brought my own from home. I'm not David. I'm Brian. Right there. I run the engineering team at Smart. Smart is a technology platform that powers retire tech pensions. And I'm not here to sell you anything having to do with pensions, so you can breathe a sigh of relief. Although I do recommend that you contribute to your pension. It's very important.
Hi all, I'm Masha. I work at the media agency and I head data and analytics. So yeah, the media agency is called Spark Foundry, but I'm not going to pitch anything. So.
Thanks, Masha.
And hi everyone, my name is Chen or Chen. I'm leading the engineering for Monday.com here in our London office.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chen. I should just say we should thank Masha because she stepped in at incredibly short notice when one of our panelists was unfortunately taken ill today. So thank you very much, Masha. Okay, let's get going. So low-code, no-code. If we can create so much with low-code, no-code, and we heard from our previous speakers that we can do everything in the entire world, does that signal the death for the true engineer? Or, looking at it from a positive point of view, does it solve the technology skills gap that we have? I'm hoping the answer to this is yes. Chen, why don't you start us off with that? What are you finding at Monday.com?
So I think specifically in Monday.com, we have like two angles for it. So first of all, we are a platform. So we have our no code and our low code. So I think that for us, first of all, like job security and stuff like that, I can't admit that developers will be here like forever. I still need to work. But other than that, like as a company, I feel like what we give others is the ability to customize, like for enterprise that in the past, it was hard for them to customize platforms and use cases to their needs. What we're having with the low code is like the ability for them to write this like very specific, their core functionality. And with the no code, we'll have everyone in the organization to do, but we as developers needed to have like different set of skills, different ideas that we need to develop for others. Because if in the past it was easy to predict what's going to happen with my software, now it's almost impossible. We had, not so funny, when someone wrote like a loop between two low-code functions that created like a loop in our servers. Now, how do you handle it? How do you prevent it? How do you monitor? How do you bring the production and keep it up for millions of users? And you know, I like I'm up for the challenge and I love it, but it requires a different set of skill than what I used to think that a developer, in our case, need in order to have a good platform.
So not necessarily getting rid of everybody, but maybe people need to tune their skills into a slightly different direction.
Yeah, I think it requires like a different set of like thinking and foundations and methods of work. How do I deploy software that will be safe for the users when I'm not really sure what will be like the next line of code that will run there? And I think for us, developer is a challenge, and especially with like the rise of AI and the rise of like those platforms that wants to somewhere helps us focus on different things and focus on our core. It brings us like to a different set of specialties that we need to develop in order to provide like a better service or better platforms.
Okay. So we're changing skills. Neil, if you know, developers out there are changing skills, some of them will move on, some of them will do other different things, develop these new skills. We heard earlier on everybody's moving left a little bit, right? So with all of these new low-code, no-code platforms coming along, who's writing them? Who's building those low-code, no-code platforms?
I think there's kind of a big irony out here. I've been sort of going to a lot of events, seeing a lot of low-code, no-code platforms. You know, there's a lot of code behind those low-code and no-code platforms. So obviously, you know, we need some engineers to build those. So there is some sort of truth in that. And then in terms of sort of low-code, no-code, sort of, you know, killing the engineer, not yet. But I think there's a time when potentially that will happen, but I just don't think that the tech and the tools are there yet. But, you know, some of the stuff we heard earlier, look how quickly you can, you know, Tap said you could deploy an app. And also, it also depends what your definition of low-code, no-code is. And, you know, I would include sort of DevOps and hyper-automation in low-code, no-code, and I would, because I'm into platform engineering. So it's really important to be able to make sure that you're not repeating work. I think this is one of the key things. You know, get the engineers focusing what they're good at, which is engineering. So this is, I guess, one of the points about low code, no code is to get business people more focused on the value that they're delivering, and then for the engineers to focus on actually writing the important code, the difficult stuff that AI could have a good stab at, but probably hallucinate and do a nightmare on.
So, Masha, you've got a bit of a different view on this, right? You think this is liberation time, right? We're freeing people up. Tell us about that.
I really do. I'm the big optimist and believer that the low-code and no-code platforms will really free up people's time and free up the human potential and the creativity, so that then you sort of don't spend time resolving some bug, but you actually can elevate yourself and think more about the business challenges, work more with the, you know, with the stakeholders. Although I know that's not everyone's favorite thing, but even if you don't like to do that, you still get, you know, time to do some more creative work. So I think it makes work less boring, personally, for me and for my teams, and, you know, kind of more exciting. So I'm a huge optimist, personally.
I like that. So we're all going to be elevated. We're all going to do more things faster, better, and not have to worry about the code so much.
Exactly. And I also think that it's, you know, AI gives you answers, but what we need to learn is ask good questions, you know. So, okay. And I mean, this is like I'm reading Isaac Asimov's short stories, you know, and it's all there, you know. There's exact those discussions of sort of is this multivac, is the supercomputer going to take our jobs? And it's like, no, it's going to make them more creative, and it's going to, you know, just learn to ask good questions. So that's
brilliant. Let's ask Brian and then Nicola about, you know, you've got teams, you're in a team who are actually potentially, you know, got some very clever engineers, I would imagine. How are they facing into this challenge? Are they looking at it as something that's coming down the line to scare them? Are they embracing it? How's that going? First you, Brian.
Well, there's probably been more discussion on that topic, specifically around AI, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because it was the topic last time. Yeah. But I think most of my team see low and no code platforms as tools in a toolbox that are great for solving certain kinds of problems, so long as you can live within the constraints of those platforms, or perhaps if you have a set of users who you know, need to be able to move at their own speed and can also live within those constraints, and perhaps they'd otherwise kind of be starved for engineering time. So for example, you know, at Smart, our marketing team uses Webflow, which is like a WYSIWYG static website builder, and it's great for the marketing site. You know, it's a simple static site. It's what you see is what you get, and they're really happy with that. The applications don't run there. You know, we're not doing input validation or running any kind of complex logic there, but it was great for them, and it lets them move at their own pace without relying on engineering, because they were always, you know, struggling to get in the backlog and get priority for their often aesthetic changes against, you know, functional things that might drive revenue. So in that kind of circumstance, using it as a pressure release valve to have a multi-speed system can be really valuable. And similarly, you know, one kind of bigger point that I want to make is a lot of us come from tech companies. And so in that regard, you know, the types of people we employ are often very similar, but we're not most companies. You know, most companies in the world have not engineering departments, but IT departments. You know, they put laptops on desks and they get Office installed, and they don't really know how to support implementing business logic, back office type workflows. And so for them, these kinds of products are incredibly valuable because it lets them deliver automation and capabilities that would have just been hand cranked before.
Okay, that's interesting. How's it working for you, Nicola?
I mean, I don't think it's going to replace engineers anytime soon. Similar thing happened in infrastructure space where we used to have on-premise everything, and now everything is in cloud. And it brought up some additional types of engineers to maintain or do that part of infrastructure. So in ZGO, we build a lot of no-code tools for internal use. We manage products in a sort of no-code. We move that from engineers to other people in business a little bit cheaper to operate than engineers to manage products, for example. And we also use Salesforce and a lot of Salesforce flows and automation through the Salesforce Marketing Cloud for sending emails. So we try to move things off engineers to people who directly need to communicate with customers, for example, to use the tools.
Great. Okay, so I'm not sure what you said, Brian, about IT departments becoming, through low-code, no-code platforms, becoming sort of software engineering deployers. I'm a bit scared about that, just because I've worked with some interesting IT departments. But I do like the idea here that we are freeing people up. I think that's quite a good one. We're not getting rid of people. Some skills are changing, as Chen's saying over here. We need to reflect that. But actually, ultimately, therefore, it could lead to not only better, faster, better applications being deployed by people who are not down in the weeds, but it could lead to solving our technical problem with not having enough technology resources. And I think that's a good point. So let's move on to the next question now. So this one is about, and we heard from Steve earlier on, and LeapWorks, they've really industrialized what they're doing, and they're using it for large customers. We saw the brands that they had up on the board, yeah. But scale, I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical about this, right? I haven't used a lot of low-code, no-code in the teams that I've worked with. Recently, there's a couple, the odd developer who's experimenting with it a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, that's okay, don't fuck it up. It's all right to mess with. I'm not sure that I'm ready for this to be production, huge enterprise scale deployments of code, right? I'm a bit scared about that. What can you guys tell me to help me be less scared? Brian, let's start with you.
Well, I can't help you be less scared. I think, there are a bunch of companies that operate in this space. Some of them, I'm sure, will tell you that, their turnkey solutions are enterprise ready and highly resilient and ... They also probably have varying degrees of transparency in terms of how they operate. I mean, there was a question earlier about, understanding bills of material for software around what you're actually deploying. Some of them, I'm sure, do that, and some of them, I'm sure, don't. So you have to find somebody that is prepared to convince you, I guess, that they can operate at the scale that you need. But I'm confident, having used a few of them, that many of them are not very reassuring in this regard.
Okay, so we need some improvements there. So Chen, how's that work for you? How are you making decisions about what to use in your enterprise systems and what not to use?
So I think that's really about that, and what is like when talking what is the core flow of my business, what I should scale. And I think the magic around no-code, low-code is that it's not all or nothing. I can decide if I'm putting in it, like, should it be in my core flow? And maybe when I'm starting a startup, this is the best decision, because to be honest, we don't know. Like, we're starting and we're planning for a scale. It's maybe not the first bottleneck that we're going to face. So I think it gives the engineers, and especially around small teams, the ability to focus on their core, the ability to focus on what is really matters and what is the real business pain that they're trying to solve, as opposed to solving I wouldn't say like the generic problem, maybe it's the wrong sense, but the idea is like, we're not solving what everyone else solves. What do I need specifically to solve right now is what I'm going to focus, and this is the area that I want to scale. And then maybe I'll find that this is the bottleneck, maybe not. So I think the ability to choose which, let's say, building blocks I'm putting in my platform, and then to replace just the one that you need. I think it's something that can help us.
And do you think that's something, anybody else can answer this, jump in with this, do you think that's something that will change as this part of the organization, this part of the industry matures? Do you think that we'll start saying, oh, that's a good platform, that's reliable, lots of people use it? Do you think we'll build industry confidence around those things?
I'm sure we're going to, like, if we just talked about the infrastructure for, like, I think if like 15 years ago, I will say, like, to the, not DevOps, but back then IT admins, like, hey, you're not going to manage the server. Yeah. Someone else will manage it for you. You'll just, I don't know, like, allocate a server, and then you'll allocate another thing. They won't say you're crazy, because it was back then, like, pretty normal, but like, in terms of giving others the ability to manage your servers, now it's like a commodity, and I think, like, it's definitely what we're going to see.
And I think that's what we need to see, right? I mean, 15 years ago, the server that my team ran was called Obi-Wan Kenobi and sat under my desk, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, to move from that transition. But I think that confidence has to come across the industry. Neil, do you think we're nearly there? Are we at a tipping point on this? Are we close, or is there a long way to run?
Good question. So I want to frame this in a brief history of engineering. This is something I believe sort of passionate about. So there only ever will be 3 types of engineers, okay? Let's see how many of these different types are in the building. So type 1 engineer would be the sort of pioneers and trailblazers of mainframe and space. So any COBOL engineers?
I'm COBOL trained, seriously.
Maybe me a little bit. So type 1 engineer sitting over there. So type 2 engineer, so maybe, I don't know, end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, so the rock stars of the internet and cloud. So there must be some rock stars here tonight. Let's put your hands up. Right, so.
Wow. Oh, somebody went like that over there.
Cool. So the 2 fingers, yeah. Cool. So we need our rock stars. Yeah. But then what's next? The type 3 engineer, and I'm calling it the artificial engineer. And I'm not saying AI, I'm just saying artificial engineer. So that's your type 3 engineer. So, and we're at this tipping point, right? This moment now where, you know, we've all been doing our coding, we've been checking all into GitHub, we've been using our sort of tooling to help automate and remove complexity. And we've got fantastic tools. I'm going to plug AppCircle again to distribute our software and get it into the app stores and remove all that toil. But AI and artificial engineering, which could be an evolution of low-code, no-code, will come in and hopefully take more of this repetition away. I mean, I stopped being an engineer because I hate typing, you know, public class logon for every different leading financial institution I work for. So low-code, no-code has the sort of power to remove a lot of complexity, a lot of repeat work, and sort of catalyzed by sort of power-ups like sort of AI and, God forbid, who knows what quantum will do. I think it's going to be super powerful. So, but being realistic, what's that time frame? I personally think over the next decade, I think we're going to see the transition from your .NETers and your Python. I mean, how old is Python? Right. My son's doing his computer science today, and I was thinking, when you go out to work, do I really want to, you know, push Python on him and have him to do all this spacing? So wouldn't it be much better to talk with natural language? And that's the sort of killer app, isn't it? And that's what was so interesting in some of the discussion earlier, using language to overcome the code and visual. Exactly.
Something much more common.
Yeah.
Much more accessible for people. So, I mean, that's really interesting, your 3 types of engineer. I think you need to work on the branding for the title of the last one. Because I don't really see anybody applying for artificial engineer. It's not really a sexy title, is it? So
I get ChatGPT to say,
to
talk to you.
Got it. Okay, excellent. Sell it to me. All right, good. Let's move on from that one. Okay, so that's really great. We think that we might be at a point where if we've got the right engineers with the right skills in place, we could start to, with confidence building over time, we could start to use that. Just by a quick show of hands on Neil's last point, what sort of timescales do people think before this whole low-code, no-code thing and the career of the artificial engineer? God, I can't believe we coined that term, but there you go. Put your hand up if you think it's like 2 years and we'll be there. Yeah, all right, Steve. Fair enough. You know, you were there in 2004, mate.
Shorter, right?
I'm going to go long. Oh, shorter. Okay, 6 months.
I'd be 1 year.
1 year, and we're going to be there, and it's and every, okay.
I think you're going to be surprised.
All right.
Christopher Nevada Graphics was already saying what you just said here. He's told everyone
We're
to get
already
their
there,
kit.
we just haven't told anyone yet.
Oh, great. That's a good plan. That's a good plan.
You have it with the release.
All right, but hang on a second. For those pioneers, you see, this is like another generation. New pioneers. That's what we're calling them, right? Okay, so new pioneer engineers, right? Great, lovely. But for those of you who are running large departments, or those of you who are running slightly, older systems and stuff like that, what's the time scale? 2 years? Put your hand up if you think 2 years before you'll be seriously relying on no-code, low-code. One person. 5 years. 10 years. Right. So, Steve, did you get the names of the 10-year people? That you got to target them, all right? That's how to do that. So 10 years. Who said you'll all be dead? Did you say they'll all be dead? All right, okay. Go for it.
I think what's really interesting about what will happen with all the old stuff, this is really a really interesting problem. There's some Wall Street Journal article that says might be $3 trillion, might be $6 trillion, forgive me, a few trillion of clunky old software out there. Now, could low code, no code help us transform all that clunky old software? I think that could be quite interesting. Get these big banks and big organizations out of the hellhole that they've got themselves in with technical debt. There's some great platforms for new stuff, but are there some platforms that, can help us do that with low code, no code?
Right.
Yeah, but how would you deal with with the giant organizations and the circles of sign-off that you have to bypass to get to that place? Because that is my I think, biggest pain. That is, I feel like there's two worlds, that there is the automation and low code, no code. And then there is the massive spreadsheets and of the data that is horrible and invalid, and people cannot agree on what is your, how do you get people to agree on, what are the KPIs?
And I think that's why most people put up their hand for 10 years. Because it's not that they don't think the technology could achieve
the technology
that.
has
It's not
been
that they
there
don't
forever,
think that there are skilled engineers who could embrace that technology. It's that they know when they knock on the door of the business users, they'll be like, yeah, not today, please, I'm using my spreadsheet. That's a universal problem. That's AI specific, that's automation specific, that's everything specific. But our new pioneer engineers, as coined by Neil, are the way forward. That's how we're going to solve that problem. All right, let's move on. Okay, so we've got all of this stuff. It's all really good. Everybody's sold, everybody's using it. We've got new pioneering engineers out there. And it's sort of related to one of the questions that Andrew at the front earlier on asked us around IP. So we're now, these platforms, basically Steve owns everybody's IP in the world at this point, right? How do we ensure when a company goes, right, I've got this great business idea, I'm going to build some solutions and some processes and some proposition around it, right? One of the things that they're looking for, particularly in the startup world, is they're looking for an exit. And in order to have that exit, they're looking to own some IP so that they can scale that out. Brian, what do you think about this? Is this a mystical world? Is somebody else owning your IP?
It just depends on the terms and the details of that particular provider. Again, somebody said there was like 450 vendors in this space. Some of them, I'm sure, give you ownership of the code that's generated, and some of them won't. But the other kind of risk here besides IP ownership is, most of these platforms are to one degree or another proprietary, so they lock you in, which makes sense. Recurring revenue, we all have that, right? I certainly do. But they go out of business, and then you're in trouble. Airplane.dev went out of business like a couple months ago. Internal.io went out of business late last year. So there's risk in investing in these platforms that you can't easily migrate out of.
Okay, so Nicola, you're building inside your organization, right? But you're using no-code, low-code to do that. Who's owning the IP? How are you wrangling that? Are you just making sure you build your own no-code, low-code things? Is that how you're tackling that?
Yeah, so we are not building everything with low code, no code, just some stuff. But yeah, we have telematics products. That's a new engineering challenge for all insurance companies at the moment. We're building that on our technology, and that's not gonna see low code, no code anytime soon.
Got it. Okay, so actually, your crown jewels, the things that are really important to your business, you're not probably handing over to the low code, no code world yet. Chen, are you chucking it all in the same basket? Are you like going low code, no code, 100% all done?
I wish we could, but no, that's for sure. Just as you said, like again, my core, I'll protect my core functionality, my core business problem. Maybe it's a matter of trust, and Infuse will be there, and I'll trust other platforms to hold it. But for now, I really feel like as a company, it's smart for us to keep like the core functionality. And again, just to mention, like if you are a no-code load platform, how can you keep the ecosystem? Because I think by the end of the day, it will be a lot around the ecosystem. Because we're going to have a lot of those platforms. By the end, like to be a successful one, you need to keep a live ecosystem when both sides can like have revenue from it, feel successful, feel like sense of achievement from it. And I think this will differentiate between the platforms going forward.
And do you think, so that's good, but like everybody wants a sense of achievement, right? Everybody wants to feel like they've added value. So, are there going to be joint ventures or partnership deals between the low-code, no-code platforms? Is that something that we might see in the future? So there's shared IP across that. Masha, what do you think about that?
Well, I was actually thinking that the IP is not necessarily code itself, it's the idea, it's the product, right? Like, it doesn't matter what sort of, how is it, well, obviously, all considerations sort of taken into account that, yes, you need to maintain it, you need to make sure that the platform doesn't, well, not sure what to do if the platform goes out of business. But I think the IP in itself is the product, rather. And then if you have the sort of the cooperation or joint ventures between the no-code local partners and the the users. Not sure how that would play out, but I think that could be the way out. But I actually think like it's the ideas that are the intellectual property, because all the code is sort of open open source. So
okay,
I'm not sure if I can like IP my regression or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
but I think that plays into some of the things that we heard earlier on about getting business users enabled to pick and choose low-code things to bring a business idea to life.
Exactly,
right? And
yeah.
therefore, if they're able to do that, they can worry less, I guess, about the IP. And I guess I mentioned earlier on, the world of open source, and we all kind of got used to that. So maybe this is something we let go of. Neil, how do you feel CEOs and legal teams in companies are going to feel about that? Are they going to be comfortable?
Well, I think the CEOs need to make sure they've got their legal sorted and look at their fine print. So to be blunt on that side, that's super important with these platforms. But if you just seg a little bit onto the collaboration point, we all remember sort of 10 years ago when they said do Agile, do DevOps, and now they say actually you should have a DevOps department. You should have DevOps as part of the team. Yeah. So I think there's a hybrid role emerging, maybe, I don't know, DevOps, SRE, low code. That's not very catchy. We'll have to come up with we'll have to come up with an acronym. No. Okay. We'll call it David. I had to look at your badge. So we'll call it David. And so this collaboration is really important, and the hybrid role. And I think AI is going to play a huge part in it, because it's the ultimate automation tool, which is what low code is doing for us. So I think you mentioned trust, and the other big thing is sustainability. We've got to nail that right with low code to make sure that we're not burning too much carbon. We're able to work as a team together and not introduce too much cognitive load, because it gets very complex very quickly. But I do think from an IP point of view, it's going to be difficult to copyright an idea. But then look at what Google did with a very simple idea. So we'll have to see.
I think it's certainly going to be a minefield, and we know that the lawyers will be the only people who win. But okay, let's move on from that one. So we're into our final question. Please start thinking about some questions you'd like to ask this panel. They've clearly got some good insights into this, so do come up with a couple of questions. We'll give some time for that. So as Brian said earlier on, last quarter we discussed AI. We did a whole thing on AI, and we realised that AI is all singing, all powerful, and it's going to solve world peace. But given that, and given that a lot of times AI is used for code, and we now have low-code, no-code platforms, so AI is probably going to build the low-code, no-code platforms, and it's going to do that based on all of the knowledge that it's getting from the code LLMs that it's mining all over the world. Has all the code that needs to be written been written? Is that it? Is that we don't actually need to write any code? Now, I take, the point that we've still got a bit of integration work to do, plugging these things in, right? But I'm talking about the actual functional code, not the integration, plugging it together, but the actual code. Is it out there?
No, next question.
Excellent.
My real answer to that is no, but I was talking to some folks earlier today about how Copilot, which is very popular, maybe the most popular AI dev assistant out there right now, it's integrated into GitHub, is now exposing analytics in terms of how your teams use it and the acceptance rates. And they're creeping up. At least they are at my company. And so what that means is we are indeed writing less code as time goes on. So the simple answer to your question is, has all the code been written now? The answer is no. But we are probably, over time, getting to the point where a lot less code is going to be written by hand. There is a weird question about what happens when these LLMs run out of training data and they're starting to train against their own other LLM-generated code. I don't know what happens then, the singularity, I guess.
Yeah.
But we are definitely approaching a point where the amount of code being written is going down. But I guess it never hits zero. I hope it never hits zero. Some of us may be out of a job, but the trend is clear.
And I think that's a really good point, because if LLMs are training themselves off of something and then people stop doing the something, then what are they going to train themselves off of? They're going to train themselves off of the last thing that they trained themselves off.
Exactly.
Right?
It means no new patterns.
Yeah. And that will be disruptive. Masha, what do you think about that?
I actually think that humans can invent new code. I think this is what humans are actually really good at, and so is the AI, I guess, as well. But humans are good at creativity, and I think by AI actually, reducing the duplication, like automating boring processes, freeing up time, you actually can think like some more meta thinking, meta coding. So I think there's we just don't know what's coming up. Like, I think there's this, I'm sure you've heard it, that something like 60% of the jobs that we have today weren't even there in the 1960s. So, we don't quite know what's coming, so I think,
I will say
again, I'm an optimist.
One thing about those historical predictions that we just got hilariously, sadly wrong is back when people were talking about automation and AI, they were like, oh, well, what's going to go is all those boring jobs with people sitting in offices crunching numbers, and humans are going to become like focusing on creative endeavors like art and music. Well, clearly we got that 180 degrees backwards.
But maybe that's coming still, right?
Oh, it is. It is.
We're
It's
at
just
the
that
tipping
the arts came. They came for the arts first, and I said nothing.
Have you not seen TikTok? It's great.
Well,
okay,
exactly.
Let's move on to Chen. So how do you feel about that? You've got an engineering team. Are they just pinching code from everywhere else and not writing anything new?
Yes.
You're being filmed.
Yeah. But seriously, like, I feel like there's a lot of way to reach to the same destination, but to the same solution. But I feel like it will free us up to look for new business problems, and even if we'll end up by copy and paste a lot of codes and connecting and integrate it, but to find what is the really next business problem, what is the next impact that I'm an engineer can do, it will bring more people, more minds about the real problems and optimizations, which I feel like we still have a huge way to go. I remember when I had I was lecturer in one of the university courses, and I was talking to them about big data, and I show we talked about the first MapReduce job, and we took a big file of text and tried to do a simple word count, and we did it with MapReduce, and then I wrote a 2 lines of Python, and it worked faster on a 1 megabyte file. Oh, wow. So just to understand, there are a few ways to do things, and if we'll keep thinking in one way, and just as you said, if we're going to continue and train things on the same thing again and again, we'll get to some result, but maybe we can optimize.
Yeah,
How we can optimize.
I think that invention and innovation around invention has got to carry on, right?
Yeah.
It's the lifeblood of how we've moved forward as a society, right? So I think that's really important. In your organisation, I'm guessing you're hoping that we haven't written all the code in the world, but again, similarly to Chen's organisation, are you seeing a shift to much more reuse and much more adoption of code that's already been written rather than starting from scratch?
To a point. So we build most of things in Python. Now we are building new things in Scala, and there are new languages invented every year. So we are reusing a lot of code, and with Copilot, that's happening more and more with other people's code. And and using a lot of open source libraries. So there is a lot of reusability. So we are not reinventing everything, but there are still new challenges happening all the time that there is no code to copy to solve those challenges.
I think that's an important bit, right? That's the invention, that's stuff. We don't know what we don't know. There's stuff coming up all the time. Neil, do you want to take us home on this question, and then we're going to go to the audience for some questions? You got any thoughts on this?
Sure. So I think if you extrapolate out, at some point, we just won't need the code as we understand it today. I sort of hinted at it before, and it's more likely to be sort of natural language. But if I'd have said to you 3 years ago, you could go into just into a standard browser, right? We had them 3 years ago, and you type in and said, "Please create me a video of a bunch of folks sitting at talking at a conference about low code, no code, and pan round and show the wonderful diversity in the audience, etc." Right? You would have said, "Well, you're mad. You can't just do that from a prompt and have it back now." So the question will be, if you extrapolate out further, at what point can we manifest a low code, no code, or a platform, or whatever the hell we like using AI? And I think that's that big transition, bad names aside, from type 2 to type 3 that we're looking at. It's just a question of how long.
Okay, so we've dumbed it down to types now. Okay. No, that's good. It's good. Clearly didn't like my title. Okay, so that's really good. Oh, I can see people with their questions waiting. Thank you very much for those, guys. Let's now go to the audience for questions. This gentleman here had his hand up.
Hi there, thank you. I'm going to first go optimist and then pessimist with a question. So optimist, let's assume for a second that in the next 2 years, 6 months, everyone adopts this, super take up, everyone loves it. We're going to see a massive explosion of applications that have been created by citizen developers and everyone else. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, well, every generation has created its own sense of technical debt. I remember an explosion of applications on Lotus Notes way back in the day. They were awesome, but also problematic. What do you guys think are the challenges and issues that we're going to create that we're going to have to solve for once we all love low code, no code?
You want to take that one?
I would love to take it. I'd love to take it. Well, the reason is Fujitsu, who I've been working for, despite other things in the news, quite forward-thinking in terms of regenerative society, and I got the opportunity to write a white paper on this subject and how we can overcome inertia through innovation and remove that sort of technical debt. And over the last 10 years, we've had all our sort of various tools from we went from a notepad to an IDE. I'm sure somebody out here still uses a notepad, and then we got our DevOps, and we got our Agile, and we got our distribution tools from our sponsors. But AI will have the power to catalyze the things that we've learnt as human beings about delivering and building software. So it can use the basis of Agile to learn. And also, if I said to you, there's, I don't know, 1,000 crappy old Java apps sitting in a bank somewhere and no one wants to touch them, and we'd have to send 100 ninjas in to do it, it's too much to do. All of a sudden today, with a low-code, no-code platform and some serious automation and thinking, you could do a lot of that sort of grunt work to get that done. So we've got the tools, or we're about to have the tools, to be able to enable us to remove the technical debt. The question is whether we'll still want to, and whether there'll be a new industry instead. But that's my sort of personal feeling, that AI will absolutely catalyze all the wonderful things that we are learning today.
And I think we'll have a new kind of debt, and it won't be called tech debt, it'll be called citizen debt, right? We're just moving the debt to the left a little. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let's go for this gentleman here.
Thank you, Luke. The two most common use cases for low-code, no-code I've seen in the past 5-10 years have been, not necessarily in this order, working around, well, eliminated boilerplate code, which is 80% of most of what everyone in this room builds. And the second one, accelerating value delivery under the pressure of fast-changing business requirements. Would it be fair to say that now with generative AI, the writing is on the wall, there's a death, the death of low-code, no-code is not too far from us? So with generative AI, we can generate code. So effectively, we haven't gotten rid of the problem that low-code, no-code helps with. But that's today. Maybe in 5 years, our generative AI will compile straight to machine code. Any thoughts around that?
You see that we've, we might be too late with the low-code, no-code?
I don't know. I think, again, with the idea that a lot of the users of these platforms are not necessarily engineers anyway, they don't necessarily benefit today from a tool generating AI code for them that they can't really read or validate. They're looking for the outcome. And so in that regard, I do think natural language interfaces, or maybe you've seen some of the demos online of people just like taking a marker and drawing a UX, and then something scans it and then builds a functional web page from it. That kind of thing, probably yes. So it would be AI cranked. But what's happening under the bonnet, maybe it is constructed with low-code style blocks, or maybe it's building it from scratch. But in a way, I think the consumer of that, in many cases, is going to be immaterial for them because they're just looking for the outcome.
Cool. Okay, let's go for one more question, please.
Thanks. Cheers.
Sorry.
No, don't apologise. Thanks. My name's Scott Seaborn. I'm from Forever Foundry. It's my first visit to London Tech Leaders. I just wanted to say, having gone to Mobile World Congress every year, the year of the mobile, for 20 years, this is genuinely the most interesting panel on low code, no code I've ever been to. So there you go. If you don't mind, I'd like to make a couple of statements, not many, but I think low code, no code is really distracting because I'm trying to work out what the best question I want to ask is. And I think there's a massive difference. So Chet mentioned keeping the core clean and using low code around the edge. And I think Brian mentioned something about a bill of materials spreadsheet in a manufacturing process, I guess, converting to low code. And everyone talked about it not being sophisticated, but there are. Mendix, for example, was bought by Siemens for $800 million. And, it can convert BOM spreadsheets automatically and it can keep the core clean. OutSystems is another low-code platform which we personally integrated with the Royal Navy on a very significant implementation. So first of all, I think this no-code, pairing no-code with low-code, just blows my mind kind of thing. And so I wanted to kind of focus on a question because I'm really interested about non-functional requirements, right? So the question for the panel is, if you make an app in a low-code platform, not a no-code platform, and it automates non-functional requirements like versioning. So when iPhone 20 comes out, that's automated, and all the versioning around the API application interface changes. What's the value of that, right? And, is that how you value these things? Do you understand? I'm trying to talk about is it a platform to future-proof software development?
You're nodding along, so
Yeah, I think I'll take it from I'm not sure if like the same or a different perspective, but it feels like what we're trying to say, like in those low codes, we're trying to automate the processes that we know today. And I want to take it maybe with a different approach. I want to build an automatic process, which is a different than let's take the process that I know today is like the manual process and let's make it automatic. And I think this is part of the things that we've tried to do in the past, about automated testing in the past. Let's try and replicate what the user will click. So it doesn't really work for automation. Like I need to build the automatic process from scratch. So I think this will be the real magic around it, and this will be like the added value. To build the automatic process and not try to replicate what we know today as versioning or know today as like, and I think this will be like the path to go forward.
What about like SecOps, DevOps, cloud load? If all of the NFRs are automated to 80%, yeah, it's the Spotify versus vinyl. You're locked in. I like vinyl, I like Spotify, but if you build it in a, let's say, Mendix or OutSystems, you can't go out of it. But what about those future-proof requirements? Is that something you consider or not?
So on the DevOps side of things, I mean, I've made, you know, a lot of work out of transforming and doing sort of DevOps for very large organizations, and it's been instrumental. But actually, it's really kind of, you know, DevOps has a sort of dirty little secret, doesn't it? It's really horrible. There's lots of config files, and it basically looks like the 1970s if you called it up. Yeah. So, and it's not really fit for purpose for human beings to manage. I just feel that all that stuff that you mentioned can be, you know, what's the word, abstracted away, and we can, as you were saying, focus on really new stuff, really important stuff. I mean, what's the point of, you know, keep automating the same thing? Company A does, you know, does the DevOps transformation. There's only so many ways you can deploy an app or install HashiCorp Vault or upgrade an application. This is the power of automation, and I think, and I said it earlier, I personally think that sort of DevOps, SRE, low code, no code, all these sort of things will potentially converge, because DevOps doesn't really cut it anywhere as a name, and I think David's got a great name for it for us.
No, I'm just working on that one. Okay, so listen, thank you. That was a good question. So we're going to wrap this up. I think, you know, we've learned quite a lot this evening. I personally was, you know, as a tried and tested CTO, a little bit ambiguous, a little bit scared, a little bit like, I don't know how to address low code, no code, right? So, but I've learned a lot this evening. I think I've learned that my engineers I work with shouldn't be too scared, right? I think I've learned that I'm probably not going to make it the core production system tomorrow. I'm probably going to grow my way into that. I think I've learned a lot of my colleagues are going slowly as well, so I'm not too worried about rushing to the finish line. I like the idea that we're engaging the business, we're bringing on these citizen developers, or we're elevating people to be more useful. I think these are all interesting things, and hopefully you as an audience have got some confidence out of that and can go back to your day jobs and think about how low code, no code might apply a bit more in your world. In the meantime, can we thank Nicola, Neil, Brian, Masha, and Chen? Thanks very much.